Howdy neighbors, Ron Hayes with you today. We're talking with our state wheat specialist, Dr. Jeff Edwards from Oklahoma State University. Jeff, let's talk a little bit about this 2011 crop. Just today we got confirmation from USDA that based on June 1st numbers, they're leaving the May 1 numbers alone in Texas, Kansas, and Oklahoma, so 74.8 million bushels. Are you fairly comfortable with that number?
I am, now that we've gotten into wheat harvest. I was very skeptical of the number a few weeks ago, but now that we've gotten into harvest, yields are coming in better than expected. They're still not great, but better than expected, and I think we'll make that 75 million bushel mark.
I think it was a 22 bushel per acre average statewide. I guess that must be something you're comfortable with as well.
I'm fairly comfortable with that. Most of the fields that are being harvested in southwest Oklahoma, they're coming in that 15 to 25 bushel range. The caveat there is that the worst fields in that part of the state and in western Oklahoma, of course, were abandoned and weren't harvested, so they don't factor in as much. That's where we're at in southwest Oklahoma. In central Oklahoma, we're coming in at 20 to 35 bushels per acre. And in that northern tier of counties in Oklahoma, around that Alva area, there's even some fields that are doing 40, 50, a few even pushing 60 bushels per acre.
I guess that's the exception, not the rule this year, though.
That's the exception. Most of north central Oklahoma is coming in that 25 to upwards to 40 bushel range.
Now, the things we're hearing thus far is that the quality is really pretty good on this year's crop.
The quality, using the parameters that we normally speak of, test weight has been very good. It's been coming in anywhere from 58 to 62 pounds per bushel. Our protein numbers are up. They're very good. Our farmers did a good job of fertilizing the crop. The one thing that's coming into play this year that we normally don't think much of, but our millers and bakers are having a little bit of difficulty figuring out how to use this crop, is that our seed size is fairly small. We don't really have shriveled seeds, but they're small. And it's a little bit tougher to use those small seeds in the milling process, and I think our millers and bakers are a little bit unsure of how to use this crop right now.
That's kind of the yield of actual usable flour, right?
Right, so you have a smaller seed, there's more bran as opposed to the flour ratio, and when you think about the milling process, you have to grind that seed or run your mill a little bit tighter to extract that flour, so your extraction is lower with the smaller seed.
Now, obviously, we didn't have nearly the weed pressure this year, and I would think that would result in a fairly good number on foreign matter and all the dockage.
It should. That's been a huge issue for us in previous years, and due to the drought, one of the things that has happened, we haven't had as much weed pressure as we've had in previous years. The dockage numbers are lower. Still some foreign material in there, still some rye issues, but I also attribute some of that to our farmers really stepping up their game and doing a better job of controlling weeds than what they've done in the past, and hopefully that will continue.
We're hearing obviously some of those reports from some of these fields. We're trying to get enough fields out there that have been in canola that come back to wheat. The wheats look pretty good.
Right. There's a benefit to rotation with canola. There's a benefit to rotation with any crop. In almost any cropping system, whether it's corn, wheat, soybean, whatever, there's a benefit to rotation. And when you're in a continuous production system growing the same crop over and over again, yields are generally depressed, no matter what the crop is.
As far as what you've noticed on varieties, I know it's a little early yet to tell a whole lot, but what are you noticing on varieties this year, maybe versus the last year or so?
Well, this year I hate that we've had the drought that we've had, but it's been interesting to see how varieties who have been star performers in some of the better yielding environments, how they perform in the drought situation. And I'm going to brag a little bit on our OSU varieties. Duster was a star last year, and it's not dominating every trial like it did last year, but it's in the top grouping at almost every site that I've harvested, so it's performing well. We've got a new variety, or fairly new variety out there, Billings from OSU, that's performed very well this year in the northern tier of counties, or northern and north central Oklahoma onto the Panhandle. Not quite as well as southwest Oklahoma. Let's see some others that are performing well. Everest is a new variety out of K-State, and it looks to be doing well in northeastern Oklahoma. in southeastern Kansas. Jackpot would probably be the one that stands out to me out of the AgriPro varieties that's doing very well. So a lot of good varieties to choose from. And one thing that has been consistent at almost every location, even in a lower yielding environment we've had this year, that the newer varieties are outperforming our older varieties. The newer varieties are beating Jagger even in the drought environment.
Right. And one other variety from the OSU stable that I thought I've seen kind of at the top of at least one or two locations, Garrison.
Right, our newest variety, Garrison, along with Ruby Lee, both of those are doing very well. You know, Garrison kind of has a really nice fit as an endurance replacement. It fits a lot of the same profile of use that Endurance has, only it has better yield potential, and that's what we're seeing this year. It's performing well in dual purpose situations and has a similar adaptability as Endurance, but we're seeing it out yield Endurance. Ruby Lee, I was looking at it at our variety trial, which has not been harvested yet, but over at McLeod, Oklahoma, and has outstanding yield potential. It's got a bit of a racehorse in it, so I'm excited to see how it's going to do.
Very good. One last question, Jeff, and that has to do with, we're halfway done or a little bit more now with this year's wheat crop harvest. What have you learned? What things kind of are take-home messages to producers to remember as we wrap up this year and look to 12?
Well, I think the big thing we're going to have to focus on now is seed availability and making sure that our growers are going ahead and lining up seed for this fall. We're coming out in better shape than I thought we would be. Looks like we're going to have quite a bit of duster available, but it's still important to go ahead and make those decisions and line up seed for that fall so you can choose the variety and you're not just going to have to take what is left. The other thing is moisture conservation. I know of some fields that were planted last fall, maybe a little bit too early. They burned through that moisture through the fall and winter and just didn't have anything left when springtime rolled around. And some other fields just adjacent to those fields were planted a little bit later in a little bit more timely fashion, didn't get quite as much fall growth, and were able to make it through and still have some yield out there. So moisture conservation is always going to be important in the state of Oklahoma.
Very good, Jeff. Appreciate your time today. Jeff Edwards joins us today, and I'm Ron Hayes on the Oklahoma Farm Report.